can I steal a moment of your time before this episode plays? Thanks so much for listening to Labours of Sports Coaching. The appetite I see for the blend of academic and practical coaching conversations happening on the show is nothing short of amazing, and I'm determined to make this show bigger and better. Now, to help with that mission, please can I ask that you follow and rate the show 5 stars wherever you're listening. This takes maybe 10 seconds and has a massive effect on increasing the show's visibility, and as a result of that, its potential for future growth, which ultimately will enhance your return as a committed listener. Also check out the show's support links for anyone looking to offer that extra bit of backing. There's much more to come for Labours of Sports Coaching, and I thank you for joining and driving our new community. And with that, enjoy this episode. Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Labours of Sports Coaching with myself, Mark Carroll. I'm going to use today's episode to chat about AI, more specifically free AI, because you need to pay for some subscriptions to a lot of the sort of different AI models that are going about. But I thought, well, guys, here there is, albeit some limited capacity, and actually, to be fair, I'm not going to focus so much today on what AI can't do in terms of open access free AI. Okay, I'm not going to focus so much on what's held back or just maybe what is just beyond current capabilities of these tools at the moment. I'm going to focus on what it can do, just in case you as a coach haven't really thought about it. And then we'll delve into a little bit of that. And this is based on my own experience of how I've used it so far. You might, know of other benefits, and in which case, please, comment and let me know about that and let other people know about that. That'd be amazing when this episode's released. I think the best way to start with this, however, is to actually chat a little bit about why you should bother getting in at this stage. So even where, as I say, there are some limitations to it, why should we bother getting in? Why not wait until AI gets better? Well, it's more a bit of an awareness of how quickly this space is going to evolve. So I was listening to a podcast just the other day, actually. I think it was the founder of LinkedIn talking about the fact that today's AI is going to be the worst AI will ever be. Now, that's quite a powerful statement in my opinion, because if you consider the fact that it's not going to go away, it's only going to increase further and further and very quickly, just because there's so much sort of commercial competition, I think, for different companies to try to, make it as good as it can be. So I guess the private sector's going to do a lot of work in that regard. But because of that, tomorrow's AI is going to be so unbelievably versatile, potentially, that it makes a lot of sense to start to learn about how to play with this tool now, so that the learning curve for you in the future is less. Because at the point where it really can assist us as coaches in ways that can transform our practice, you may waste time then trying to learn something and need to learn more at that point than you would if you start to learn how to play about with it now and actually just, find ways to benefit now. But then because you're getting used to using it and you're getting used to understanding how to use it, come the time where tomorrow or next month or next year or in the coming years, when it really does pick up its capacity, it won't seem, like you won't seem so much like a fish out of the water. So I think that is why it's really important. I think we get used to it now, and because it is a bit of an individual endeavour in a sense. So again, you're going to need to learn it on your own in some way. So again, it's just like, why not start to play about with it? Importantly, as I say, you don't need to pay right now in order to start learning how to use it, and actually in order to start to benefit now from using it. So I'm going to base some of these benefits that I've came across, based on Chat GPT, and just the free version that anyone can download. You just sign up to it. I'm not talking about the ones that you need to pay. So Chat GPT, right? So let's start with what I would call creative brainstorming for niche, non-technical session planning. Now, the reason why I said that, and I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but that right now it isn't. It's certainly not in football anyway. It might be different in athletics, or and I'll come back to why that might be the case in a moment. But in football, if I tried to ask ChatGPT to make me a session around, I don't know, passing or pressing from the front or something like that, what it will spit out is just, it's not going to be good enough at all. For two reasons. It hasn't been trained on the data required for that, and it's not been trained either, I would expect, on data where the standard is actually good in itself. It can speak very confidently about things that ChatGPT, in the way that it sort of spits out information, but it doesn't mean the information itself is going to be good. So it doesn't have that. Plus, it a lot of ways, certainly if we're talking about ChatGPT as well, which is the free one that we're talking about right now that everyone can access, that's not what you would call like a multimodal AI, where it's in sort of like spit out like a diagram either, in the way that a lot often we would look and want to visualize a session and the way we plan it. Certainly in football anyway, is that's the way we would typically want to see a diagram. It's not going to do that for you. So that aspect, there's a technique-based skill learning, it's still not very good for it, right? But what it can help with, and what helped me with, is if you're trying to plan around plan activities that are more niche. So for me, that was if I'm trying to integrate sort of psychosocial skills learning within a coaching session, either built into a coach's session, or even as a standalone separate activity that goes alongside the coaching session, I found it was quite useful actually to put some stuff into ChatGPT in terms of what you're aiming for, and to ask for some ideas at a conceptual level. Now, then from that point, you then need to then go and actually write. It will tell you, well, you should do this type of exercise, and then you need to then integrate that and modify that somewhat. But I found that a really good starting point for quite a creative thought process. So I think similarly, if you're a coach that is wanting to do something maybe in that sort of psychology space, or a coach that's maybe wanting to think at the conceptual level, not necessarily requiring to see a blueprint of here's the exercise, here's the number of bodies you need, here's how you set it up. But if you're a coach that's just wanting to think creatively about the ways in which you could plan sessions at a conceptual level, and particularly where I think, as I say, it's most helpful is where we don't have a lot of information already within that. It can pull on more outside, less sort of siloed thinking sort of beliefs, I suppose, from other domains, and sort of because I think its database is quite general or so, but in a way we can sort of utilize that, as I say, by pulling on it a little bit. So for those sort of broader creative thought processes and how you could be innovative at a conceptual level, it could be quite useful for brainstorming in that respect. And then to try things and then modify it in your own accord. Now, as I say, I'm only talking about, when I go back to what I said, that it's not necessarily very useful in football right now. I don't know in terms of what it would look like if you're maybe a strength conditioning coach. I don't know what it would necessarily look like where, maybe you're an athletic coach where it's often timed more, and that maybe there's a bit more of a, don't want to accidentally insult an athletics coach here, but where there's more of a sports science, quite, I don't know, time-based exercise and things like that. Maybe it could help with that a little bit. But I'm only saying based on what I know from what experience, football hasn't been that great. But as I say, what it can do, like I said, is that creative thought process. So that it is helpful for that. What it could also serve as is a bit of a critical friend. Now, you can think about this in two ways. So when I'm saying critical friend, I might be talking here about actually, talking to it about your issues a little bit. I'm not saying that use it as your agony aunt or your sort of psychologist or anything like that. I wouldn't recommend that at all. But let's say you're dealing with maybe an athlete related issue, and maybe there's more than one correct way of dealing with it, which is often the case with coaches. We have sort of higher order decision making to make. So let's say there's multiple ways in which you can deal with it, and you're wanting to sort of get a second opinion of sorts. Now, the reason why I would say, well, why not just go to a person to do that? And I say for certain issues you should. It's to do with your health and well-being at %. And again, I think you would still, even certainly if you're trying to sort of outsource it as a way of how to deal with other people, I would still suggest that where it sort of falls onto ground where there is, that that ethical need to perhaps actually consult other people depending on that situation and do that and use your professional judgment to determine where that is the case. But let's say at least as a starting point to get you thinking about what maybe needs to happen in that space, or if it is maybe a lighter topic and it's more to do with group dynamics and something you're already doing or something you maybe are unsure about what to do, and you do get some response from it in that respect. And the reason why I would maybe suggest that could be useful to some coaches is coaching. We all want to hope that every environment in our coaching is to be very open and people want to share, and there's people are open to be vulnerable and talk to people, but we all know that there's a lot of impression management in coaching. So, and sometimes people don't want to say certain things to other people, sometimes just don't have access to other people. So again, you don't necessarily need to be on your own in that way. It could serve as a wee bit of counsel for certain problems. Now, going to what I've used it for, as a critical friend around planning. So again, if I was to take, let's use the example of if I was, and I have done this before, I've been considering how I might shape a curriculum, maybe a wider, developmental curriculum for players, and I'm maybe talking at a conceptual level about, types of activities I would like them to be doing. Maybe I want to periodise the activities. Let's say again, for me, if it was in a sort of psychosocial space where, I think this group of players at this age, if the next age group up, I want them to move from goal setting onto might still be goal setting, but it's a different angle of it, or it might be an entirely different topic or something like that. Or I'm thinking about, and again, I would probably shy away a little bit from the technical aspects here, because I think that's craft knowledge and it becomes very difficult, I think, for ChatGPT to help with that. But again, where it's these wider things, and sometimes the psychology space is helpful here for what it might talk about. Or maybe I'm wanting to consider the way in which I do teach a skill, but considering the neuroscience and the brain development of a kid as to how much they should be expected to take on at what point in time. So how I might orientate the level of topics and the progressions that I take through the topics. Well, what I've done in the past is I've actually came up with my own plan. Okay, and I might be in part inspired by some of the creative brainstorming that ChatGPT's also assisted me with. And then what I could do is actually put it back into the system, and I'll say, right, here's the list of activities I want to do in this order. Can you tell me, based on this reason, what I'm aiming for here? Is this ordered in a way that you think would be useful for it, or could you suggest alternative orderings, perhaps? And ChatGPT's been able to actually, in some cases, validate my opinion and give a bit of an explanation for it. But in other cases, also actually give suggestions for maybe different ordering or things that I haven't maybe considered. So again, it's like a bit of a confidant there in terms of as a critical friend that it can be useful for, particularly where you're needing, you maybe don't have access to someone who can cast a critical eye on something, and you're needing someone to consider a whole lot of information. And again, do it in an efficient manner. It could be helpful for that. So that is another reason, for why I would suggest giving it a go and starting to play about with it. Again, you might get varied results, but for the reasons we went back to, it's better to learn about it now. And it is helpful. It is helpful now. It just depends on the topic itself, I suppose. Another reason that I think you should use it, and what I've found helpful for using it in this way is, let's say us being academic coaches, so coaches who have an interest in theory and an interest in different maybe technical models and stuff like that. Now, if you go to journal articles, sometimes these can be quite difficult. It's just to decipher, or even if they are laid out well, just some topics are just tough to understand. What I've done in the past, so I read a book on brain development. It was a neuroscience book, and I found it really interesting, but some of this stuff, it was difficult to stick. So I was able to go into ChatGPT and go, can you explain the process of synaptic pruning, which is one of these fancy terms that was used in it? And when it then attempts to explain it to me, okay, but if I still don't get it, I can ask it to do it in more simpler and simpler ways. So again, I think that's really helpful, because we're trying to sort of bridge that gap between sort of theory and practice. Us being, if we're coaches in practice, we're trying to take what we can from the theories, from the science, okay? It's a gateway to help with that, because you shouldn't, right now, it's not fair in a sense that some coaches aren't able to use information that could help them because the information hasn't been explained well enough. ChatGPT is basically got endless capacity to simplify the information to a point where we can then digest it and then we can build back up to it. Kind of whole way, I suppose, a bit of coaching lingo. So it's been really helpful for that. So for me anyway, and I think that's useful. Obviously, there's a wee asterisk here. Be careful. It can, again, very confidently spit out an answer to maybe a research-themed question where you're asking it to go into some research and tell us some stuff, but always fact-check that after, because there has been cases, I think, where it's made certain things up. I don't know if it's very good anymore. I don't think it's quite at the stage yet where it can actually tell you it doesn't know something, which is one of these problems with AI, I think. So you still fact-check it. But I think more and more, and I was just looking on the ChatGPT website the other day, and they have some, what would you call it, smaller software equivalents that you can also tap into, where they've actually deliberately upskilled on the research aspect and got access to things like Google Scholar and stuff like that. So there are still free research-orientated versions of it, because then it will be trained on better data, more specific data in that case, rather than necessarily the more general, broad ChatGPT, which again, as I say, can still be useful, but maybe in this instance, if you haven't maybe got the capacity to go and fact check in the same way, maybe these sort of like mini modified versions might be better for that reason. But that could be really helpful. I think that is really helpful, because maybe you're a university student in coaching, maybe you're a college student coaching, maybe you're doing some online course in coaching. You're trying to help yourself improve as a coach, but it's just that the information, how you're reading it and the way that it's been digested in the course, it just, as it's sinking in, well, don't just sit there and, not make the most of the time that you have on that course, and not make the most of the learning opportunity you have in front of you that you've committed to, that you deserve to get a reward from. Then go to ChatGPT and utilise it for that reason. So that's another one I would say. The final one that I've found it really useful too, and there's two parts to this, is about social media. It's almost like a social media friend. So I've done a previous episode with Timothy Williams about how we can leverage social media as sports coaches, and actually why in a modern age coaches really should be trying to create content and not just consume content for lots of different reasons. And I would encourage you to go and actually listen to that episode with Timothy. Really insightful for that. But in the whistle stop tour way, we're trying to increase our personal branding as coaches. We know that, spaces like LinkedIn or X, there's a lot of coaches out there, potential employers in coaching, people that you would want to show what you can do, and also you just, share that knowledge in a community of practice, amongst other coaches. ChatGPT could be helpful for getting you started in that content creation mindset, because it's quite hard for people to sometimes bring themselves to start doing it. And often it's partly because we don't know what we should talk about, or we don't feel confident in the writing. So ideas for posts, for example, I've done it myself. I've typed in ChatGPT, give me some examples of some posts that sports coaches might find useful, and you could be really specific on LinkedIn, for example, and you could be even more specific than that. You might say, give me some variations of posts that are around motivation and coaching, okay? And then it gives you some ideas, and then from there I go, oh, right, that's a good idea. I know about that. It resonates with me. And then you can write about it, because let's say we understand that sometimes the way the algorithm works, that in order to get more impressions, you might need to post more regularly and stuff like that, in order to build up likes or comments and opportunities to engage. Then the system rewards you in that sense. If maybe you have a really good post that came out, once a week, that just came from a session that you just took that was really vivid in your mind, obviously you don't need ChatGPT's assistance. They'll come up with a post around that, but maybe another two times that week, or one other time that week, let's just say you're just, dipping your toes in the water. You need a bit of help. You're just scratch the back of your mind to think of what to say. ChatGPT to give you a wee bit of a kickstart in that respect. It also can help with your writing. So, and there's nothing wrong, in my opinion, with using ChatGPT in terms of AI on social media to, put in your thoughts on a particular topic, but in a way that is helpful for you and accessible for the way you want to write and the way you think. Perhaps it might be a bit muddled, but you're able to put it into ChatGPT, different thoughts on it, with some coherency as best that you can do. And then you'll ask ChatGPT to kind of write a post that's suitable for whatever the platform is. You might ask you to make it concise or whatever. Just write something based on your thoughts to bring it alive. It will instantaneously bring that to you, and then all of a sudden you've got a post. Now, from there, I would probably say then still tweak it and start to put a bit more human touches to it. I think it seems to be quite obvious, actually, I think, when people do write with AI, but again, my opinion, who cares? I think like if people are using it and ultimately there's good information inside of it, and it's the information that person would want to relay, who cares if the language seems a bit overly perfect in a sense? I don't really care about that, but I'm aware, again, some people do, whatever, and some people want to have an authentic look to the way that they would post. That's fine. You can still do that there, but it's kind of like it helps you get over the writer's block, is what I'm saying. So I think, those are really good reasons to use it. And again, it's free. All the things, the benefits that I'm saying you can get today, you don't need to go, they aren't, beyond a paywall. You should, for free, download ChatGPT, start playing about with it. As I've explained, it's only going to get better. It's better to get in at the ground level now and start to learn how to use it and start to think about how it could serve you as a coach. And then that's just only going to make that, as I say, that learning curve less steep as it sort of, incrementally builds up in its capacity. So hopefully that's useful to you. I just think we need to, move with the age that we're in. So I think that's part of why I wanted to have this conversation. So yeah, hopefully that's been useful, guys, and I will see you next time.